Hey guys, HardlyBriefDan here with an episode of the Unity Make an RPG series. Today we're going to continue working on the ability system. In the last video we worked on, or it was like the first part of creating like the in-game effect of the ability system, and we looked at creating this little image here, this button that spun, that showed that you used the ability, and then we instantiated and created the ability within the game. But having the way I did it in the last video and the way I explained it really created a lot of problems, and it was because I was starting these coroutines that need mono behavior, and I didn't want mono behavior to be attached to all of our data. So that's what we're going to look at today. We're going to look at how we can refactor a lot of things, and that's what we'll be working on the next several videos. In this video, I'm going to show you the changes that I've made. We'll talk about them. I'll show you the in-game version of how it's working now, which is a lot better. And then we'll go ahead and look at, or in the next few videos, we'll go back and refactor and rework a lot of the code, just to make it a little bit better. And then we'll start working on the editor and the database system to store all of our data. So let me first show you what it looks like in-game now. I've added this blue capsule here that is the player. It's just labeled capsule here in the hierarchy. You can go ahead and label it player if you want. The way I did that was I went up to game object, 3D object, and then I created a capsule. Very simple. I reset its position, so I went to this little, in the inspector, when I click on player, I went up to the gear and I hit reset, and then I changed its Y position to 1.5, which basically puts it on top of our floor here. Besides that, I've added the ability use script, which is the script that we created in the last video. And I've attached the fireball prefab, which this is the prefab of just the fireball, and I'll go over that in just a moment. But since I've done that, I took it off our button. So the ability use script originally was attached to our button, but I got rid of it, and I just made a reference to it for the on-click event by dragging the player object on the on-click event, choosing going ability use, and then clicking ability use, I think it's called. Let me see if I can find, on ability use, clicking that, and then I drag the button game object to the parameter or argument slot here. So that's how that's set up. And then the other thing I changed is if we go into Fireball, which was the prefab that we created, which is just this sphere. I'll drag it into the game world here. It's just this scene view. Let's see, where are we at? It's just this beautiful sphere with a particle system attached to it. That is our flame, right? It's nothing beautiful, it's nothing crazy, but it gets the job done of getting across what we want. But what I've done to change the fireball game object was I eliminated the range class in the fireball ability class. I took it off the game object because I do not want our abilities to inherit mono behavior. I want our abilities to be raw data, and then we look at that data later on. Instead of having all of our abilities and ability behaviors and all that stuff inherent from mono behavior, we want to eliminate that, and that's the goal. And the way I achieved the in-game behavior last time was by adding mono behavior to it, and I don't want to do that. So once you've done that, you've basically set up the scene, and you're going to probably get a bunch of errors and stuff, but by the end of this video, this is what we'll have working. We'll have the fireball instantiates out of the player, it goes a certain amount of distance, and then it deletes itself. Basically what I've changed here is before it's basically working the same exact way, but before it was just turning off the game object. I've just commented out that code and I'm deleting the game object because we haven't set up our object pooling code yet, but we'll get into that a little bit later. So hopefully you've understand how I've changed the scene. Now we're going to go back and check out the code and see what I've done and see what I've changed. The first thing you're going to really need is a script called Job Manager, which we'll go over in just a moment. But let's check out the ability use class first. So the ability use class has changed just a little bit. I didn't change anything in the spin image class besides maybe getting rid of a few debug statements. But what I have done here is we're instantiating the game object like normal, the fireball prefab, which is the sphere with the particle effect on it. I set the game object go, which is the one we just instantiated. I set its position equal to this transform.position, which happens to be the player. If this ability use script wasn't attached to the player, then we'd have to search the game world or the project view, search for the player game object, and then set it equal that position. But for now, this works because this is attached. This class is attached to our player, so we can just call this to set the proper position. Fireball ability. This is where we instantiate the new fireball ability. So FBA is just a variable that we create at the top. It's private, and then we said, hey, it's equal to a new fireball ability. I pass in. This is a new ability prefab variable that I'll talk about in just a moment, but basically you can type it now if you'd like. But it's FBA, which is our fireball ability, ability prefab, and we're passing it go. So basically the reference that we need here is whatever object is our spell, and we're going to set that equal to our ability prefab variable. And then we're calling FBA.usability, and then we're passing in the player's position or this game object, which is our player. After that, we start a coroutine spin image. So basically, this is the bulk of the changes here. This line of code will throw an error for you because I haven't showed you how to add the add ability prefab, but we'll get into that in this video too. So once you have that all set up, let me zoom in a little bit, make sure you guys can see that. This is on the ability use method inside the ability use class. Let's go into the ability class and see what I've changed. So the biggest changes that you'll see here really is the private game object up here that used to be a particle effect is now just called the ability prefab. So I've just changed the name of the variable, and then I rewrote the comment. I've a little hashtag new here just to remind me that this is what I've changed. But our game object now is ability prefab is the name of it. I set it one of our constructors. We were able to pass in the ability prefab. And I've just changed the name there to ability PB, which is the argument that we send in, and then I set ability PB equal to the ability prefab. I've also added a public game object ability prefab set, so we can set the prefab appropriately, which is what we did in the ability use, right? We said FBA.ability prefab is equal to go. This is me calling our set in the ability class right here. So that sets it equal to what we need. And then on the usability method down here, the virtual ability, we have this .b.perform behavior player, and then I've passed in the ability prefab. Instead of this, I've changed this to player, which is the game object, right? And then instead of this .game object, I'm passing in player, and then I'm passing in the ability prefab. So once you've done that, we can jump into the ability. Oh, make sure you get rid of the ability mono behavior. We're not inheriting mono behavior anymore, so you can get rid of that. That is going to throw you some errors, but we'll go ahead and I'll show you how to eliminate all those errors so that you can get yours up and running exactly like mine. So once you've done that, checked all your code in here, let's go to the range class, because this is where the bulk of the changes are going to be. So ranged was what we originally had set up in the last video, where it detects the range of how far our spell has traveled, and then it destroys it or turns it off once it's traveled its max distance. So what we're doing now is we're looking, and it's also inheriting from ability behaviors, which again, ability behaviors is no longer going to be referencing our mono behavior. So this will throw some errors because we were using some lingo down below that required mono behavior, but I've changed that. I haven't changed any of the min distance, max distance. I haven't changed the range constructor here. We have this range constructor. But I have changed our public override perform behavior. And this is where I'll talk about this job manager in just a moment. But basically here we have a perform behavior. It takes a game object, which is our player object, so we get the player object's position. And then I've changed this to not object hit, but the object that we are the prefab, right? So we need to know where this game object is, and the only way we can reference it is if we have a reference to it, which is our ability prefab here. So what I'm doing, I've commented out start coroutine because start coroutine requires mono behavior to start, and we don't want to use mono behavior in these classes. We just want raw data. So what we're doing here is we're using a class called job, and we're calling a make method, and we're passing in the coroutine, which is check distance, that we want that job manager to run. So once you have that, you can leave this code out, or you can write it in and then just put comment it out, because you won't have that bit of code yet, but I'll run it by you guys in just a moment. But here in our check distance, what I've done now is our check distance is going to take the ability prefab, and it's also going to check our start position, which is our player's position of where we started the initial spell. And so that doesn't change, but I did change this .transform position to ability prefab .transform position in all these different spots. The other thing I've done is I've commented out the ability prefab .gameObject.set active equal to false. I've got rid of that, or just commented out for now, and we're just going to destroy the game object by calling gameObject.destroy and then pass in the prefab. All this is doing is I want it out of the game world. I didn't want to turn it off because we don't have an object pooling code created yet. But before I go any further, let's go ahead and talk about the job manager. Prime31, he's a active user on Reddit and the Unity subreddit, and has some terrific videos. Created a class, or two classes, basically a video on job manager. Basically what this handles is all the quote-unquote jobs, and allows you to create jobs and destroy them and stop them and pause them. And it's basically a coroutine manager. It allows us to create all these different coroutines and keep track of them and stop them and remove them, pause them, kill them, whatever we need to do. It allows us to do that. So we're going to be using this, and I mentioned it in several videos ago, that we'll probably be using this or creating our own. And since this one works perfectly fine and it's free for use, and I'll provide a link down to his videos in the description, and I'll also provide the link to the exact video. I definitely suggest you guys check it out because it's super helpful, and we're going to be using this in our ability system from now on. So again, this is made from Prime31. Definitely check him out on YouTube, and his link will be in the description below. But once you have this job manager and job class set up and created after you watch his video, in our range class you can see where I call job.make. So basically what we're doing with job.make is we're passing in a coroutine that we want it to use, which is this check distance coroutine. We're saying, hey, we want to start this coroutine, and then we're passing in the two variables that we need for our coroutine to work, and then we're sending in true, meaning we want this job to start immediately. And you can see that if I go down into our job make, where we're passing in the coroutine, and then we're passing in should start is equal to true. So when this job creates, it's starting it immediately, which is exactly what we want. We don't want it to start later on, but you might run into a situation where you want something to start later on, but for now we are going to start it immediately. So definitely, again, check out that video by Prime31, and that'll help you get set up for what we're going to be using in the next several videos and throughout our ability system. Once you have this job.make set up and you're passing in the correct coroutine, the check distance, you can comment out or entirely delete the start coroutine method because we're no longer going to be using that. So I'll delete it here. Control S to save. And you see I wrote a little comment here. The job manager is created by Prime31, so definitely check that out. So once you've done that to the range class, go to the ability behaviors class, and I've got rid of the inheritance of mono behavior because again, we don't want to inherit mono behavior. We don't want that anymore. And I believe that's all I've changed in this class. I just got rid of the inheritance. And again, once you get rid of the mono behavior inheritance, it's going to throw some errors for you. And the way we're going to get around those errors for now is go in the area effect and just comment out these lines of code. Basically, you're going to be commenting out the perform behavior for area effect. And that is basically it. So comment out the sphere collider that needs model behavior, the sc.radius, sc.trigger. Go ahead and comment all that out, and then comment out the start coroutine because again, start coroutine requires model behavior. Once you have that all set up, you can do the same thing with damage over time. Comment out the start coroutine. Slow, same thing. You need to comment out the start coroutine because it requires model behavior. And that's basically it. There's actually one other thing, and I apologize because I know I'm jumping around and going kind of quick through all this, but I want to get this set up for you guys to start working on and start seeing how it's really going to work. The other thing is Fireball ability. In Fireball ability, since it was originally inheriting from model behavior, or we set it to inherit from mono behavior from the base class ability, we were using the void awake method down here, we're no longer going to be doing that. We're going to do the original constructor where we create the fireball ability and we add ability behaviors dot add new range class, just like that. Just how we originally wanted to do it before I went ahead and changed everything. But this is how we want to do it. It's much cleaner, and it allows us to stay away from using model behavior within all of our classes, because it causes a lot of errors and stuff later on. Because we want all this just to be pure data and nothing else. So once you have that all done, and if you've gone and watched that Prime 31 video with the job manager, and you have that written, or you went ahead and just started copying this all down, however you're going to do it, once you've done all that, you want to go ahead and test it all out. Set up everything how I've done, and test it all out, right? So again, I'll go back into Unity and show you kind of what I've done. I've moved the ability use script from the button. I put it on the player, which is our capsule here. I did create a blue material for it, so I just went up into my project folder, I went to create material, and I set its albedo color to blue. And then I dragged and dropped the material on top of the capsule just to let me know that it's the player is blue. I dragged the fireball prefab into the ability use script that's attached to the player. I changed the fireball prefab and got rid of the two range component, the range component and the fireball ability component, because I didn't want to use that anymore. And basically we're set up. We're set up to run now. So hopefully, if you copy all that down, you understood exactly what we're doing. You should be able to click this button, and you should still be able to see your fireballs launch from the player and then delete itself after it reaches its max distance. And you can see here our randomness is kind of working. Some of the spells go far, some of them don't. You can see them as they reach the screen. Sometimes they go off this little white edge. Sometimes they don't, just like that one was pretty short. These last two have been fairly short. Which is pretty cool. I think it adds a little randomness to the game. But again, we set up the constructor and the ability to eliminate that if you don't want it, if you want a more specific spell. But basically that's it. In the next next probably video or a couple videos, we're going to go through, or I'm going to go through, you guys can follow along as I set up all these different changes and make sure that our data is correct and still works with all the different changes that we've made. And once we get all those changes made, right, in the different ability behaviors we've created, then we'll start working on the editor and then the database to store all these abilities in, instead of having to hard code each fireball or each ability in a class like we did with fireball ability. If you guys have any questions or comments, leave them down in the comments below. I'll try to answer them. If you have a question that maybe you can tweet it at me if you want, I'll try to answer as best I can. If you guys have tons of questions, maybe the other viewers can help. Hopefully I didn't go through this too fast, and hopefully you kind of understand all the changes and stuff. Refactoring and stuff that's going to happen as we develop something. Again, I really haven't planned any of this out. I'm kind of coding as we go and kind of creating it as the videos come out. So we'll definitely have to go back and change more as we go on. But hopefully you guys liked the video. Please like and subscribe and comment, and I'll talk to you guys next time.